Hello YouTube, this is Our Future and the Power's with the People. Today is May 13th, 2020, and we're going to chapter 7 in my book, The Case to Prepare. This is an interesting chapter considering today and considering I wrote it so long ago. This is ISIS, disease, economic meltdown, and martial law. So anyway, I enjoy the comments that I'm seeing on there, and everybody's welcome to exchange different ideas. I don't claim to be any authority. This is just the stuff that I saw from my own research, and I'm piecing all this stuff together the best I can and the best I could in writing this book. And like I said, it is several years old. So let's get started. Okay, this is my book, The Case to Prepare. This is chapter 7, Disease, ISIS, Economic Meltdown, and Martial Law. Here lies Satan's trick to get you. I have seen and treated many diseases of all kinds, such as tuberculosis, pneumonia, flu, HIV, AIDS, H1N1, and etc. Since modern medicine, we have used basically the same surgical techniques around the world for many decades. Transferring diseases with personal protective equipment has always been extremely low. In 2009, H1N1 was extremely scary. ICUs around the country were full of young people either dying or coming an inch away from it. Very critical patients. I never took the vaccine, and I never got the flu from handling these patients. Now I'm forced to receive a flu vaccine or I can't work. Ask anyone who works in healthcare. I don't take it, but it is getting harder and harder to get around it. I will not take the shot. At the time of writing this, Ebola has been a deadly disease that the government and the media have been pushing hard to scare people. Ebola is a scam. The media has been busted several times paying Africans to act sick while they film and take pictures. I haven't seen any pictures of mass graves. Who handled the dead bodies? What kind of equipment did they have? If this was as bad as they said, it would have infected the globe without the propaganda. The CDC patented it in 2009. The Simpsons did a bit on it in 1997. The Simpsons have done bits on many things that eventually came true, including 9/11 and Trump running for president years ago. Trump gets shot. Look it up on Google. And that's funny that I put that in there because that was long before Trump ran for president. That's interesting. The media, the U.S. government, the UN, and the World Health Organization have made a spectacle of Ebola when I never saw any patients anywhere. There were no patients. One man from Liberia came into the country. He called 911 2 times. He took ambulance rides to the ER. He had 2 ER visits. The only people that were infected were 2 ICU nurses with protective equipment on. He also happened to be the director of the Peace Corps in Africa and the vice president of a Bank of America in Dallas. The media didn't say too much about that. It's kind of funny how CNN and Fox News, that hate each other and have very different opinions, both will say the exact same thing on issues like this. Even the extremely conservative columnists like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh will back the official narrative. They all work for the same man. Ebola and HIV are very similar in origin and mechanics. I believe these are and always have been biological weapons. Does it not seem strange that 2 Malaysian aircraft and an Air Asia airliner were down in 2014? One is still missing. One was shot down over a war zone in Ukraine while flying 200 miles off course. The other crashes in bad weather. Does that not seem weird to you at all? Maybe we should see what was on that plane that was shot down in Ukraine. It seems that almost all the credible news organizations don't have much of anything on this anymore. I wonder why. but this is the best I could get. So I'm going to pause it right here, and I don't even know if this is still up, but I'm going to look. Okay, so that is the website. Okay, that is the article right here that I'm referring to. And as we can see here, AIDS researchers among the dead in Malaysia Airlines crash. Okay, and let's just hang on a second here. Close that. Let's just read it. Forgive my camera work, please. Let's just look at a few minutes of this. Messages of shock and grief have been flooding social media sent by the friends and relatives of passengers on board Malaysia Airlines Flight 17, which fell from the sky on Thursday over Ukraine. The international health community is also reeling in the loss of a number of their colleagues, including a Reverend AIDS researcher who are believed to be amongst the passengers on that tragic flight. The victims were on their way to the International AIDS Conference that is scheduled to begin this weekend in Melbourne, Australia. They were flying from the Netherlands to Australia via Kuala Lumpur. One of the victims is a prominent Dutch scientist, Joop Lange, a pioneer in HIV research and a former president of the International AIDS Society, which organizes the conference. His partner, Jacqueline Van Tongeren, was also on the flight with him, says the Health Foundation co-founded by Lang. He was a real hardcore scientist, but on the other hand, he really had the heart of an activist. He was quite bold and a little bit of a troublemaker, said Albert Wu, professor at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Wu had helped Lange plan the 1991 AIDS conference. Lange was one of the first people to advocate spreading HIV medications to Africa, says Wu. At that time, the medication wasn't being delivered because of refrigeration problems. He said, if Coca-Cola can deliver cold beverages to Africa, why can't we deliver HIV medication? He helped make it happen. The Malaysian Airlines passenger jet crashed in a rebel-controlled part of eastern Ukraine on Thursday, spurring swift accusations from Ukrainian officials that terrorists shot down the aircraft. Ukrainian security services have released a recording of an intercepted telephone conversation between soldiers that Ukraine says proves rebels are to blame. The U.S. has concluded a missile shot down the plane, but hasn't pinpointed who was responsible, a senior U.S. official told CNN's Barbara Starr. The identities of the 298 passengers aboard MH17 have not been released by the airline. Meanwhile, friends and families of the passengers have expressed grief and shock through social media. Amongst them are the people who knew the attendance of the AIDS conference. The World Health Organization was also able to confirm to CNN that their employee, Gwyneth Thomas, was on board and heading to the International AIDS Conference. Thomas's friend, Gina Manila, told CNN that he was a brave, curious, adventurous person. And a lot of people, I think, were drawn to him. He was a really wonderful person doing great work in the world, adding that he was planning his 50th birthday celebration. Malaysia Airlines was able to give a breakdown of the 12 known nationalities of the passengers. At least 173 were Dutch, 28 were Australian, 28 were Malaysians, and 12 were Indonesian. 9 were from the United Kingdom, 4 were from Germany, 4 were from Belgium, 3 were from the Philippines, and 1 was Canadian, and 1 was from Hong Kong. Authorities are still trying to determine the nationalities of the other passengers. At least one passenger from Hong Kong, the city's immigration department confirmed with local media. The 15 crew members on board were all Malaysian nationals, officials said. One of them was Shenza Sayla, her best friend in the flight. And let's just go down here. Troubled airline. Thursday's crash marks the second time this year that Malaysian Airlines has faced an incident involving a downed plane. On March 8th, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 disappeared. That Boeing 777 had 239 people on board. Searchers have found no trace of MH370 or its passengers, despite extensive search efforts. Sarah Bach, whose partner of 2 years was a passenger on MH370, said the latest incident brought back memories of the earlier tragedy. At first, I thought it might have been a joke. Blah, blah, blah. We still don't know what happened to 370. It's not an acceptable situation that we haven't fixed that problem yet. So here was two Malaysian aircrafts down within months of each other. Okay? And so it raises big questions on corruption. We've got Ukraine involved. How is Ukraine, who was vice president and who was president at the time of this? So this is 2014. Okay, so let's get back to the book. Okay, so please do a screenshot of that, write that down, whatever you need to do, and please reference that news article. Okay, a lot of these old news articles may actually still be up, and that's really good news. The truth is that the top AIDS researchers on the planet were on that plane going to a conference in Australia. The plane was shot down in July 2014. Right after this is when Ebola really started getting bad. Any coincidence there? Now remember that guy, they claimed he was a kind of a troublemaker. So it kind of sounds like a guy kind of like me. This is a guy they did not want around. He was smart. He knew what was going on, and he was going to tell the truth, and they didn't trust him. And, there's a good chance that these bankers probably shot that plane down just to get rid of that guy and a couple of his comrades. Any coincidence there? No. Keep telling yourself that. The thing that you need to understand about an outbreak of a deadly disease is that it gives the government a reason, with legislation already in place, to isolate regions to contain the disease. This means travel restrictions on steroids. Now they have a reason to quarantine you if you are suspected of having the disease. If an outbreak of a deadly disease was to happen in the U.S., all commerce would stop in a matter of days. Every train, every plane, every boat, ship, car, truck would be forced to stop with the help of the National Guard, State Patrol, local law enforcement, and most likely the UN. Now, I wrote this 6 years ago, this chapter. I mean, are y'all listening to this? Because I sure hope you are. If a vaccine becomes available, the government will have the right to force you to take the vaccine or quarantine you. Revelations chapter 13, 15 through 17. Please pay attention to this scripture. And the beast was given power to command all who will not worship the image of the beast to be killed. The second beast also forced all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to have a mark on their right hand or forehead. No one could buy or sell without this mark, which is the name of the number of its name. Oh, pause. Sorry about that. Like I said, we're still a work in progress here. The government and the media have been pushing vaccines of all kinds very hard recently. In the event of an outbreak of a disease, the government could force a vaccine on you or quarantine you. If you are quarantined with 50, 500, or 5,000 people that have not been vaccinated, it would be very easy for you to be killed by any means they want. Then they can just tell the public that you, along with everyone else in quarantine, died from a disease. Now, I'm going to read that sentence or a couple of sentences again. Please, I'm desperately telling you to listen to what I am saying. I wrote this 6 years ago. Start up there at Revelations. But let's go. The government and the media have been pushing vaccines of all kinds very hard recently. In the event of an outbreak of a disease, the government could force a vaccine on you or quarantine you. If you are quarantined with 50, 500, or 5,000 people that have not been vaccinated, it would be very easy for you to be killed by any means they want. Then they can just tell the public that you, along with everyone else in quarantine, died from a disease. And of course, the public would buy it hook, line, and sinker and not give a shit. And that goes for all your coworkers. That goes for all your friends on Facebook. That goes for probably even family members. They'd be like, damn, he didn't take the vaccine. He should have took it. Then he died from this fake disease. All right, let's continue. After all you've seen up to this, do you really think they wouldn't do this? Do you really think your life matters to anyone in the government or the UN or your neighbor? The truth is that your life is worth more dead than alive to most people on earth these days. Human life has no value to the Rothschilds, and make that perfectly clear. ISIS is another form that can, is now, and will become worse and worse. Islam has a history with beheadings. YouTube videos can be found where in Saudi Arabia that is a common form of punishment. It is done by officials outside in front of the general public. I have watched these videos and it is truly horrifying. These beheadings are becoming more and more frequent, not only in other parts of the world, but right here in the U.S. The media is censoring the beheadings, so we really don't know how many there have been. Excuse me. I encourage you to research this. Most of these people are completely innocent, and it seems that they are just picked at random. This is the main reason I ask everyone to buy a small handgun and carry it at all times, especially women and older people. ISIS is a scam just like Ebola. Here's the proof. The U.S. had control of Iraq for over 10 years. We didn't find any chemicals, weapons of mass destruction. In the first week ISIS got close to Baghdad, they found the chemical weapons. Let's read that again. In the first week ISIS got close to Baghdad, they found the chemical weapons. Use your head here, and not for someone to play soccer with. They were given these weapons by the U.S. I believe the scam with ISIS is that the CIA started it and is directing its leadership. The Islamic extremists recruit people with fear and religion. Muslims feel in their hearts that they have a duty as Muslims to join, help out, or at least allow this activity to continue and grow. If this was not the case, then why don't you have well-known Muslim clerics standing up and denouncing these beheadings? Because deep down, they agree with it. I believe decapitating someone is the worst possible thing you can do to someone. Excuse me. Like I said, I'm still work in progress here. In origin, it is truly evil in origin. Understand that there are approximately 10 million Muslims in the U.S. They are in every city and small town. About 30% of these Muslims are American-born blacks that generally do not like white people very much. I'm not making a racist statement. I'm just stating a fact. The Black Panthers and other dangerous people are in this group. If 5% of the 10 million Muslims in the U.S. declared a jihad, we would have a huge problem across the country. If some American vigilantes decided to get even by blowing up a mosque or something, then you can guarantee it will be more than 5%. Do the math. If there's an outbreak of a deadly disease and or ISIS terrorism in the streets of the U.S., this is what will happen. If you do not believe this can happen, you are digging your own grave as you are reading this warning. All commerce will abruptly stop. That means whatever is on the grocery shelf store will not be replaced for a while. That means mass panic. That means people will break into houses and kill for food and supplies. That means martial law. The government will have to step in to secure the streets. They will definitely stop the sale of guns and ammo and seize weapons from citizens. Do not give up your weapons. Hide them if they come for them. Dig a deep hole, they have dogs, seal them up in a plastic bag and bury them for future use. Claim they were stolen. Break a window if you must to make it look real. Do not give up your weapons and ammo. There will be more military and law enforcement than you have ever seen everywhere in the country. At the same time, thousands will be dying from disease and or terrorism. The government will be overrun with trying to keep things secure. Money will have no value. The banks will close. The stock market will close. And every nation on earth is tied to our economy. These nations are virtually all operating in the red, just like the U.S. The world's economy will collapse. Panic will kill you. The way to not panic is to be prepared. Have a plan to stay in your home or leave, but stay away from masses of people. If you decide to leave, you must look at it as you will never return. And this is when the big one happens, obviously. Update. Obama asked Congress for a declaration of war on ISIS. The criticism of this by the right is that it is not enough, a poor plan. That it may be, but what he did ask for was a declaration of war with no borders. ISIS is a proxy war to invade Syria and Iran. The media coverage of Assad is completely false, as well as the coverage on Ukraine. We are being lied to big time. If you dig, you will find the truth. It's there. Syria and Iran are allies along with Russia and China. This very well could bring in World War III. Just to be perfectly clear, I am not advocating violence or war. I am advocating the right to bear arms for our protection. This includes tyranny and unjust laws. Our Constitution and the Bill of Rights was designed as a guarantee to be free. I, as an American, consider any law that strips citizens of our weapons to be unconstitutional and therefore not valid. And that includes any reason used to promote such a law. All right, and I'm going to go a step further there and say any law that or anything that these mayors and everybody else have said that degrade our Constitution. Every bit of this. The law enforcement does not have the authority to arrest you for social distancing violations. That is bullcrap. But on the same note, do not try to go to war with the government. The goal is to stay alive, free, and helping others. Discourage power vacuums and gang warfare. Be peaceful and never fire the first shot if in a standoff with law enforcement, government agency, or military. If you decide to stand your ground against them, be prepared to have an exit strategy. If your home or place you are staying is being invaded by criminals, by all means, do what you have to do. Just be sure that you are not doing it in an evil way. Be as peaceful as possible. understand that many good people will be scared and starving. Why don't you try to help them instead of killing them? Update 2016. Ask yourself what we have seen in the last year with ISIS. Our bombing campaigns never even put a dent in ISIS. Russia goes in unilaterally and takes out nearly 200 key targets in less than 2 weeks. Turkey shoots down a Russian fighter jet for invading their airspace. Why would you do that if you were worried about ISIS? The truth is, Turkey has been buying fuel from ISIS at extremely discounted rates. They shot Russia's fighter jet down because Russia was destroying their access to cheap fuel. ISIS then bombs the airport in Istanbul. Why would they do that? They wouldn't. It's a false flag attack. The airport was never closed, and passengers were forced to walk through the terminal that was bombed so they could see it and smell it deliberately. The reason? To instill fear. I personally talked to a doctor from Romania that saw this firsthand. And I did. I talked to a Romanian physician, that I knew. And then he had just been to Romania when this happened. And he and his little kids were forced to walk through that terminal. Imagine what kind of stories they had for their friends and family. All right, false flag attack. ISIS was created when we, the USA, pulled completely out of Iraq. This created a power vacuum that gave ISIS control. Obama knew this full well. Every military strategist told him so before we left. This has been the plan all along. On another note, ISIS happens to be the wife and mother of Nimrod. Nimrod was the world ruler who created paganism and the Tower of Babel in the Bible. If you do your homework, you will see that the story of Nimrod, Semiramis, short for ISIS, and their son Tammuz is nearly the same story as Jesus only a few thousand years earlier. When God destroyed the Tower of Babel and separated the languages, these characters took on many names you would know in Greek mythology from all over the world. They are the same people and the same stories. It is my belief that Satan will use this, along with physical proof that has been here for thousands of years, to prove Christianity a lie. An interesting thought on Noah's flood. If this happened at the end of the Ice Age, what seems to fit somewhat, the sea levels would have been hundreds of feet lower than they are now. All of the ancient civilizations lived on the coast just as 95% of the Earth's population does now. Everything that they had is sitting at the bottom of the oceans, now underground. Wiped out of history altogether. I can only imagine what is down there. You cannot discount parts of the Bibles that you may not agree with. If it's in there, it must be read as fact. It is all we have.